Okay, starting here probably in about 2 minutes. Let me know in the chat. I'm actually on both YouTube and on Zoom right now. So at the end during Q&A, I'll try and look back and forth between both. But give me some thumbs up or in the chat if you guys can hear my voice. Give me some feedback. That would definitely be helpful on my end. Fantastic. Looks like there's about a 30-second delay, but that's all right. It's good to know. It's my first time kind of doing this multi-streaming kind of a thing. But about another minute here, give people a little bit more time to show up, and we'll get started on this presentation I have for you guys on how to apply intuition. So I'll be right back. Okay. So, thank you all for joining me, both here on Zoom and YouTube. Welcome to Applying Intuition webinar, the first of a 3-part series I'll be hosting once a week for the next 3 weeks. I'm definitely excited to kind of share some of these new tools that I've definitely used in my own life that have really made a dramatic and positive impact for myself. And also, when I've worked with some other people in close to my life, they've also had very positive kind of successes and impacts by using these as well. So, but I have a lot more than just sharing techniques to go over today. I have a short presentation to show you as well on different avenues of intuition, the way that the body kind of plays into experience as well as intuition, and then how to kind of use some of that knowledge to our advantage when we actually want to go ahead and apply it in our day-to-day life in kind of like a practical way. So that's the agenda for this. I'll get into the specifics here in just a second though, but definitely thank you for joining. I am recording this locally, so in the future I will make this available to everyone who signed up for the webinar. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to make the entire webinar available on my YouTube channel, since it's probably going to be a little bit long, between, I don't know, 35, 45 minutes, but I may do like a shorter version and make it available on the channel, so we'll see. But definitely I will be making it available to everyone that did sign up to the webinar. So I have like a million screens open here, and if you have questions, definitely save them to the end. In the Zoom client, you can actually use there's an option down at the bottom where you can do Q&A. You can submit a question. I'll be looking at a couple of those depending on how much time I have left at the end. So if you have some that you want to ask about the webinar, then I will be looking at those towards the end there. And then I'll check YouTube to see as well, but kind of lots of the different chats. We'll see how this goes. So, all right, let me go back to the presentation. Okay. And really, thank you everyone who's there's a lot of people from different parts of the world that showed up. So, definitely thank you for showing up to this first live webinar I'm hosting. So I appreciate that. Okay, so just kind of topics at a glance, what I'm specifically be going into in this webinar. Number one, where I'm going to start, because we need a starting place, is I'm going to talk just real briefly about what is intuition. You need to have that kind of foundation before we move on to other topics. After that, I'm going to shift over to how intuition relates to the 4 levels of our experience. And then finally, I'm going to shift to how paying attention to body feelings is important in not only developing intuition, but also applying it practically in your day-to-day life, which is a really key part of what this webinar series is about and what I hope to share with you towards the end of this webinar. So that's at the end. I'll shift over to 2 practical exercises that you can use. The first is one where you can prime your day to tap into your intuition to manifest what you want to come about in a particular event or activity. It's a very powerful exercise that I use all the time, and you typically can use it usually a couple hours in advance to something that's important and you want to go about in a certain way. And so you leverage your intuition, and there's some pretty neat tools. Easy to use, but some neat tools that you can use. And then the second exercise at the very end, the second application, is how to, when you're in that event, in that activity, if you notice it kind of falling off the rails a little bit or something's going wrong, how to in real time reorient yourself to the task, to what you've set your intention to, and reach a positive outcome. So that's the exercise. That's kind of the roadmap for where we're going. And at the very end, I also have an exciting announcement for everyone here who's taking part in this webinar. So you'll definitely want to hear that. And if you can't stay to the end, don't worry, there will be a recording for this. But if you can make it to the end, I have a really cool and exciting announcement for you guys. So that's coming up. So for the recording, most of you guys probably know already who I am, whether it's through my YouTube channel, my website, my different courses, online classes with remote viewing. But for the recording and just a really brief bio of myself, I wanted to include here kind of who I am. I'm Brett Stuart. I founded Technical Intuition at the beginning of 2017, which is an online training platform for various intuitive and remote viewing techniques. And I'm also the author of Remote Viewing: The Complete Guide, which is an in-depth training manual, basically a how-to step-by-step process on how to use structured remote viewing techniques to access intuitive information about various topics. Now, personally for me, my journey began all the way back almost 10 years ago now. And I kind of have listed here on the screen just kind of some of the milestones, I guess, in my life that I kind of shifted through to end up where I am today. I didn't always have this intuition, remote viewing type of journey. But seems like a distant life, I was actually a character animator and artist. And even before that, I went to school for political science. So quite a shift in 2010. But I had a couple events occur in my life that really I would describe kind of as reality breaking events and experiences that really made me question what this world was around me. And this led me to attending a number of different meditation retreats, mindfulness workshops. Remote viewing was one of those paths in my initial search to kind of figure out what was real, because I had all these very kind of bizarre experiences that all just happened at once. And what I've been more public about, just because I have been and still am very passionate about it, is remote viewing. But it's not the whole part of the story, or kind of my whole journey up to this point. The other part is one that I haven't really talked about very much publicly, which is kind of the mindfulness meditation type of side, manifestation type of techniques that from various different spiritual mentors to workshops or retreats that I've gone to and learned and then began applying in my own life. That's kind of been more of a personal thing that I haven't really put out into the public. But at the beginning of this year, kind of had a long, if you follow my YouTube channel, had some pretty rough times at the end of last year with my health and kind of overcoming some personal stuff. But once I made it to the other side of that, what I found is I had this new kind of reinvigorated passion to start sharing more than just remote viewing, kind of with an online audience and seekers who are looking for truth, but also this other stuff in intuition, in meditation, in mindfulness that I've just been applying and learning over this past decade, and also sharing this with a larger audience as well, because it's had tremendous positive effects in my life, as well as in, say, like the smaller coaching that I've done on the side in person since then. So this is really this first step in sharing that with you guys, and I hope you guys find value in that as I move forward over the next 3 weeks with these free webinars and beyond. So that's a little bit about me, but let's move now into the webinar. I want to start it off with, though, with this quote from Eckhart Tolle. I think it's a good place to start. This is from his book, The Power of Now. And he wrote, "If you get the inside right, the outside will fall into place. Primary reality is within, secondary reality without." And as I've gone through my own experience and I look at my history as a lens with this quote, it just really, really rings true, because I had a lot of, as I was up to this point, of trials and tribulations, of negative thoughts and beliefs or negative habit patterns that, questioning, was I good enough to do this, to share these type of tools? Was I going to make it whatever it was? And a lot of these kind of blockers I had to deal with along the way. And it doesn't mean that journey's ending by any means. I have a lot to still progress. I know I do, and it's part of the path, this journey I've kind of decided to undertake. But what was really surprising to me in my own journey was figuring out that the reality on the internal, how you view who you are and how you present yourself out to the world, is what creates that outer world. What's around you is secondary to what's internal. And once you start dealing with the trials internally, the struggles, the traumas, whatever you have there, the baggage, suddenly all of these other things around you start falling into place by themselves. And as I begin to address those, I've noticed that it really surprised me, because my logical thinking mind kind of looked at it the other way around. It's like, oh, I gotta figure out all this stuff, and then I'll feel good about myself. Do I have enough money in the bank? Do I have a certain car? All this type of things. But really, it's the reverse. Is that if you move forward in your life with confidence and strength and positivity, you'll be like an attractive magnet for those things that you desire. But what I'm going to show you in this workshop or this webinar is really how to take more conscious control of how to do that with very precise steps. And that's something why I was really attracted to remote viewing early on, was because it was such a clean, focused, structured technique that I could really get my teeth into and start applying. And my hope is to start trying to do the same type of thing, but for intuitive techniques that you can apply in your own life. So I felt it was a good starting place. So moving on to intuition, though, because we need a foundation. We need somewhere to start. What is this thing? Maybe you've never used it. Maybe you've heard about it from other people. So let's start. I did speech and debate. I did political science. Feels like in a different life now. But when I was in college, we need to start with definitions. So let's do that. Cambridge Dictionary defines intuition as an ability to understand or know something without needing to think about it or to use reason to discover it, or a feeling that shows this ability. And it may be kind of cliche, you've heard it, I know it in my gut to be true. And it's like, it's an intuitional feeling, it's in my gut. And you've probably been right a lot of times, and perhaps wrong a lot of times on that intuition. But sometimes it can be so uncanny that you take notice of it, because it's like, wow, maybe you know someone who's really intuitive in your life. Like, wow, how could they possibly have known that? And but one of the key things here about intuition, if we take a step back and look at it a little bit more critically, is that you look at that last part of the definition, which is the feelings that show this ability. And this is going to be a little bit what I'm talking about in this webinar, is feelings, because intuition, it's a name that we give an experience that we frame in body signals, like the gut. I have this gut feeling. Or it's like, I feel it in my heart that something will come about. Whatever it is that it's always through the lens of the body. And so when we start trying to use intuition tools practically, we have to somewhat reverse engineer that to then apply it moving forward in our life. And so that's what I'm going to show you at the end of the webinar. Other notable kind of observations about intuition is that intuition greatly benefits from experience. By doing it, by practicing it. It's not something that you just immediately pick up necessarily and learn right away, although there are those savants out there. I wasn't one of them. It took a lot of time, practice, but it does benefit from experience. And the second observation really about intuition is that a finely tuned intuition is essential for achieving goals that you've set for yourself out in life. It really is. And if you can develop that, you can begin, like I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, it's almost like you become a magnet for those things that you want to come about in your life, whether that's in your health, wealth, or relationships. But before we get to those specific techniques, I do want to talk about the different avenues that this can be applied. And we're going to start with the different levels of experience, because again, it's almost like we're reverse engineering this. And so I think it's a good place to start. And I have simplified this because I don't have, 3, 4, an entire day to go over, a long course with you guys. But there are 4 different levels of experience, and it's a good place to move on to. And so to start, the first level of experience we're very, very well aware of is the physical. It's the physical level of experience. This is seeing vivid colors in the world, the magnificent shapes, the quick motions, the darting motions of different things. Then you have hearing, which might be the voice of a loved one or the break of a wave on the beach. Touching, it's the tactile sense of the world, as if you were to rub your hand against the surface of a building or pick up sand. And then you have feeling. Feeling under the sense is typically associated with temperatures, like how hot or cold, the ambience of the temperature ambience of an environment under physical. And then you have other ones like taste, smell, as well, which, everyone has their own connoisseur, so to speak, of what they enjoyed, what they like tasting and what they don't. And the same perhaps with smell. But smell's an interesting one because it can be a very powerful thing as far as experience is concerned. For example, for me, I have very vivid memories of when I lived in the high desert for a period of time. After rain, a thunderstorm would go by, and it would just be this really sweet smell of honeydew right afterwards. And I loved that smell. And it brings back different memories I have of living in Southern California high desert. But it might be something else, maybe like the perfume that your mother wore when you were a child, something like that. They can be very powerful levels of experience that we then later on can tap into and use to our advantage. Second level of experience is the emotional level. We're typically also pretty well aware of this level, what this is, but these are things that we experience through our body, and that's an important thing to take note of. These are not things that are, yes, there are EEGs that you can put on your head, a device that'll show flickering lights that shows, oh, this part of the brain is lighting up when you're mad, or this part of the brain is lighting up when you're happy. It's like, great. That's wonderful that you can measure that. And actually, maybe at another time, it actually can be fairly useful for biofeedback. But for our purposes, when we think about the emotional level of experience, we don't really say, I have this brain feeling about this. Like what? That doesn't make sense. No, it's like, I have the gut feeling about this. It's the part of the body that you feel through the emotion. Or it's like you feel sorrow in your heart or something like that. It's like our body's the lens for emotions, and it's how we perceive it through that level of experience. Very useful when we want to start actually applying this positively in our life. Third level of experience is the mental level, and these include thoughts, naming, descriptions, logic. Naming, it's what I'm doing here. I'm listing something in the mental level here of my notes, and conclusions, among other things. This is the mental, the mind. We're in our head now. We're figuring things out. We're putting ideas and concepts into categories, into hierarchies, into different orders. And so this is that third level of experience. Now, the final fourth level of experience is the inner level. And while it's kind of unfortunate, not a lot of people are familiar with this level of experience. Maybe there'll be glimpses in people's lives. We'll look at this. But most people, perhaps, maybe you're walking around, have never had an experience of something from the inner level in their life. And so what is this? Well, the inner level is a place where you have intuitive knowing about something, where there's no facts, there's no reason, there's no analysis. There's just this deep knowing you have about something, and it's unshakable, it's immovable. And what's helpful, obviously, is that eventually you may get feedback for that, and that almost strengthens that knowing, because you're like, see, there it is. I was eventually given feedback about it, and that increases your capacity for inner knowing on that level of experience. So other areas that exist in here is your awareness of your true self, what that is, that exists on the inner level of experience. And there's perhaps again the cliche saying of "to thine own self be true." Again, that's the inner level of experience. But it's also a place or an avenue where your higher self, for lack of a better word to call it, that aspect of you, also has the ability to operate as you in this life. And so it's like you are like the avatar for it. It's through that channel of the inner the inner level of experience that can actually happen. And really, once you develop that and you start practicing that, that's where miracles are made. That's where you're really able to have positive change in your life, when you're able to harness that ability and apply it in your life. At least that's been my experience, and this experience I've seen when other people have done similar things. So it's a very powerful place, but it's unfortunate that a lot of people don't necessarily or have experience with this. But I want to just give a real brief example here, just bring it back down to practical knowledge here about how these levels are used in a real world example. And this is, I just want to give an example of when I was 17. And I was driving my car, maybe a little recklessly, perhaps driving 60 miles an hour in a 45 mile an hour zone, but it was a 6-lane freeway. So come on, like, what is this 45 mile? Anyway, so reckless teenage driver, right? But, I felt safe, supposedly. But anyway, in this example, I want to just go through the 4 different levels of experience in this so we can kind of reverse engineer that later on in our exercises. What occurred in this car accident is I was driving down in the fast lane, in the far left lane, and there was a car that was from a parking lot pulling out into into traffic to keep going the same direction I was going. And as I was watching this car pull out, I noticed immediately, because I have very, very vivid memory recall of this, but is the physical level of experience. As I'm watching this car start to pull out across 3 lanes into my lane, my muscles tense up. My shoulders go up, and my arms actually even start to go up a little bit in front of my chest, in my face automatically. Not quite like in my face, but in front of my body. And that's the physical level of experience reacting to the environment around me, to the experience. Now, the emotional level of that experience was my disbelief. I'm looking at this guy driving, it was a Mercedes, an old 1980s Mercedes, slowly start pulling into, at like a crawl speed, I'm going 60 miles an hour, pull towards my lane as I see it happening. And I'm just, there's no way. There's no way this guy is pulling directly in front of me from a dead stop in front of a car that's coming really quickly down the lane. So I'm in disbelief. And then disbelief at the emotional level then switched to panic and then fear very, very quickly when I realized it wasn't unavoidable. He was coming directly at me. I had nowhere to swerve out of the way because there was a big divider right on my left. I couldn't avoid him. And so the emotional level of experience obviously shifted very quickly there. But then it went back to the physical again, because as soon as the contact was made and he ran right into the front end, my front right wheel of my car is where he made impact, and he kind of knocked me into the side, the barrier on my left, I was back in the physical level of experience. And this is where my vision was narrowing, and interesting things happen. I'm going to talk a little bit about this a little bit later, but you may have experienced this in a car accident or something else, but time stopped. I mean, not completely, it didn't stop entirely, but it slowed down to a point where it felt like everything was not going in slow motion, but it was going in super slow motion, to where I could, if I had the ability, get out of the car, go get a cup of coffee and come back, then the car accident would still slowly be happening. But, my concentration was at beyond peak levels to essentially, far more than usual, to where I had that experience of time almost becoming standstill. So it's back, though. That's back on the physical. But then as the car spins around and I'm holding on for my dear life, and it finally comes to a stop, maybe, 50, 75 feet further down, it knocks me in the wall. I spin around a couple times, and the car stops. No flipping, thankfully. As soon as it ended, I kind of came to a mental realization immediately afterwards, which was, what? I'm not injured? Like, this was the most crazy accident I've ever been in my life, and my body isn't intact? That's nuts. So I came to a realization. It was a cognitive conclusion. Wow. Like, yes, there's emotion in there, but it's also, that's crazy that I'm not hurt. But then as soon as I opened the door to get out, the Mercedes guy, of course, he didn't take any damage to his car. He was totally fine as he knocked me into the wall. As soon as I got out of the car, and just to kind of shake off my disbelief and my shock, I had an inner level experience happen as well. And this is where I had this really profound sense of gratitude that in that accident, I should have been, like, this should not have happened. The speed I was going, the way he hit me, the way the car spun around, like those are recipes for disaster. And so as I got out of the car, I had this inner level of experience of this gratitude feeling of, I don't know what guardian angel saved my butt, but thank you, because this, I felt like it shouldn't have happened. And there was something else that was there, beyond my experience that was assisting me with that. And I have had a number of these in my life, actually, that is, there's something else where it's just like I have a deep gratitude for it in assisting with, whether it's in health or in traumatic situations or in accidents like this. So felt very blessed. So that feeling that came over me was an inner level experience. It was a deep knowing that something was there that was keeping me safe. And I didn't know what it was, and I can't prove it, but I knew it at a deep level. And so that's the example through that experience. So understanding how these work, we can actually turn them around and use that information to our benefit. And that's what I want to move on to here, is how do we then springboard off of this understanding of the levels and then apply it in our life. And so while I can't get into all of these here, here's kind of some of the more advanced stuff you can do with it. So this is more beyond the basics of what this webinar is about. The first technique, once you start applying these in this way, is you can actually develop what I refer to are called deep listening techniques. And so what this is it allows you to effectively communicate with other people by learning to empathize with all 4 levels of their experience in real time. It's almost like you have an ability to put yourself in their position and look through their eyes back at you as if you were them, feeling their emotion, feeling their physical experience, feeling what it's like on their mental plane, in their cognition, and potentially even on their inner level of experience. And if you can fully overlay that, you can actually your level of communication, if you can do this in real time, will just be absolutely amazing, because it's like when the person's communicating with you, you can create a space where they feel they totally are being understood, because really they are, because you are acting as if you are them on each level of experience. So it's a very powerful technique that I learned a number of years ago. But this is like, again, this is beyond the basics. These are things of like, if you want to continue down this road of pursuing intuition, other more advanced areas you can kind of apply it to. I always like kind of knowing, even when I learn remote viewing or different techniques, it's like, okay, well, what else can I do with this? And so I wanted to include this in this webinar. The second thing you can do, which is beyond the basics, is you can also clear unconscious blocks and things like self-sabotage, negative programs, things of that sort. And the third kind of thing you can do is you can actually leverage your understanding of these levels of experience, particularly in the physical domain, and actually, so that perception of time slowing down in the car accident, you can actually make that an on-demand skill. Like the mind has the ability to do that, to perceive time in slow motion. Like, we're not taught that in school, but believe it or not, that with practice, you can begin to start doing that and creating that on demand, just as easily as if you were moving your muscles or moving your arm out from your body, that easily. You have that capability. It's just training it to actually be able to use it and apply it in a way that can work for you. And the main purpose isn't necessarily like, whoa, I'm in real time. I mean, that's more of like a side effect of why you'd want to learn this. But maybe the more practical application of this is that you can slow your perception of time by doing that even just a little bit. Think about what that does. That actually gives you you perceive time in a slower fashion, so you have more time to actually complete what you need to get done to achieve what you want to create in the world. And so whether that's writing a book or creating a webinar or whatever it is, if you feel like you never have time to get what you want done, this type of application actually will make it feel like you have the time to do it, because it slows your perception. You can be twice as productive in the same time span. And it's an incredibly powerful technique to learn, something I use all the time because I'm always crazy busy with a lot of different projects. If you've been following my work, I'm doing a lot of things this year. But what you actually, kind of the primary purpose of that, though, of why you would learn that technique, is because when you put an intent or you want to manifest something in your life, you need to actually put it right there in the physical domain that activates, it prioritizes essentially what it is, and that gives it like this effect of like time is slowing down. And so it's a whole course I could talk about on that, but I just wanted to give you like a roadmap of where advanced levels of this can go. So before we get into the exercises, I just kind of do want to return to the body feeling because it's important to actually do the 2 exercises today. The first is, well, kind of ask, well, why body feelings? More than just maybe the framing of intuition. Why are body feelings important? And the reason, just really clear cut, to the point, body feelings and understanding body feelings is important because it's the lingua franca. It is the language that the unconscious mind, that the higher self uses to communicate with you. And so if you can develop that and also reverse engineer it, you can communicate effectively back to your unconscious mind, back to your higher self, and get everyone on the same page for what you actually want to do with your life, what you want to set your intent to, what you want to target, and specifically with like laser-like precision make come about in your life. And once everyone's all on the same page, all aspects of yourself, you need to be able to have a language, a way to communicate, a way to dialogue. And the body signals is one of the primary avenues to actually do that. So you can kind of think of it as just a picture I found, which I felt kind of matched what's going on really effectively, which is that you can kind of think of it as you're in your everyday life. You're always on the phone, and that's fine because you're living your awareness. You're living your life. You have to pick up the kids. You have to go get groceries. You have to pay the bills. You have to Netflix and chill, like whatever, right? And that's fine. You're living your life, and you should live your life. But the thing is that when the higher self or the unconscious mind has something important it needs to tell you, it needs a way to deliver that message. But because you're on the phone, because you're doing your life, right, it's going to get a busy signal and it's going to go to voicemail. So as a consequence, just like on our cell phones or any kind of phone, you have a voicemail, there's this little flashing light. It's like, hey, there's a voicemail. Hey, listen, check your voicemail. And that little blinking light, if you will, can manifest as a nonverbal body signal. This can be things like, this can be things like a headache. This can be things like your eyes are sore, like your back is in pain, like your stomach hurts, there's, maybe not a teddy bear with a bandage on his head. I thought that was funny to put in there. But what is the unconscious in control of? The unconscious is in control of blood flow, the autonomic nervous system, right? So if it's trying to get your attention, what is it going to do? It's going to use the tools at its disposal to do that. So this is, for example, flow of blood. This affects your feeling of feeling hot or cold, depending on whether your vessels are dilated or constricted. What else is it in control of? Well, muscle tension, right? You consciously observe this as stress or pain versus the feeling of relaxation in the muscles when you don't have that signal going off. Also headaches. It's just a different type of blood flow constriction to different parts of the brain. And then you have, this is one that I've experienced, which is the flow of bile and enzymes in the stomach. And so this is perceived as stomach pain. And this is where you might feel pressure or bloating when the unconscious or the body starts throwing more enzymes into that part of the body. Or you have the reverse, congestion, when there's little enzyme flow, essentially, like you just rock solid in your stomach, and that can result as a painful signal. Now, if you haven't seen it already, I released about a 10-minute video on my YouTube channel that goes over a step-by-step process on how to actually alleviate some of these minor body pains. But really the power of the technique, it's less so in the kind of the effect on the body. That's kind of like a side effect. The power comes from what was the unconscious trying to communicate to you. And if it's from the higher self, what was the higher self trying to communicate you through the unconscious mind? That's what's the message. And the thing is once you get that message, this is the secret. The secret is once you get the message and you like what it was trying to tell you, the body pain or the body signal ends up just disappearing because you got it. You listen to the voicemail. You listen to the voicemail and okay, press 7 on your cell phone. Don't need that message anymore. Thank you very much. And then you move on with your life. So, the reason for that body pain eventually goes away. And, there's no reason for the unconscious to keep sending you a signal for something if you already got the message. So how do we practically apply this in our life other than in that video, which I gave on how to relieve kind of minor body pain? Well, let's go to the first technique. It's a very easy one to apply, and it only takes, once you practice it, about 60 seconds once you get proficient at it. But this is what I like to call a short-term unconscious dialoguing technique to prime your day or an activity in your day for success. And to do this, you'll need to be able to work with imaginary experience on both the physical and the emotional levels of experience. And it's important here, a little clarification on what I mean. This isn't just visualization techniques. Maybe you've done other webinars or gone to workshops. So they're talking about visualizations. Visualizations, if you go back to the levels of experience, visuals are one tiny part of experience. It's a tiny fraction. It's the color, it's the shapes, maybe some motions in it, but it's missing all the other ingredients that incorporates the first two levels of experience. What we want to do, since we're reverse engineering what's going on with the body signals, the higher self, and the unconscious mind, we want to tap into those levels of experience and create vivid imaginary experiences, and then apply those in ways that actually affect positively what we want to create in our life. Now you may be saying, I've never worked with this type of technique before, but actually, believe it or not, you have. Because we do this all the time. We're very, very proficient with this. If you can think of like strong memories you have about something big or significant that happened in your life, whether it was with a loved one, whether it was in a career or in health, whatever the area is, we're pretty good typically at retrieving those memories and almost like revisiting them, rewatching them, whether it's on an internal screen or through some other form of memory interrogation of that mind file, if you will. So, the analogy maybe is too dated now. It's like we put that DVD player, maybe so we sync up Netflix for the show. Maybe it's a little better for today's vocabulary, the lexicon of today. But we can replay those experiences. And really all we're doing is, in this exercise, instead of accessing one from the past, we're doing something a little different. Instead of going and getting a tape and putting the play and hitting the play button, we're actually creating a new one. So I'm going to show you how to do that and why it's effective and a valuable tool to actually use. But to do this, you have to be able to use vivid and create vivid imaginary experiences. Now, this is a whole class I could teach on imaginary experiences, how to do them, how to create them effectively. And there's a 3-step process you would do to actually begin developing this skill. This starts with learning your dominant perceptual modality, which starts with either visual. That's me. I'm incredibly visual. I have like an internal screen in my mind's eye that I can just put images on and see, like a little television screen. That's me personally, but not everyone's like that. There are 2 other dominant modalities. The other one is auditory. Some people, believe it or not, when they think of a memory, they won't get the visuals of it. They'll get the sounds. They'll get the communication. The conversation will come back. Not necessarily the visuals, but like the tone that someone had will come back. Like that's what they'll actually get. That will be a dominant sensory input, their dominant modality. And then there's the third, which is kinesthetic, which is essentially the feeling of it, how the memory or the experience made you feel. That's what's attached to the memory. But to actually create incredibly effective, vivid imaginary experiences, which we'll use to then reverse engineer and like send outwards to create what we want to happen in our lives, you need to be able to essentially use all 3 aspects and kind of build up each one of these different avenues that maybe is not necessarily your dominant. And so it's maybe something, well, this is definitely something I'll be talking about more in the future. So, but it's too much to kind of go into this webinar. However, it shouldn't be an issue with this exercise, because really, to think about it simply, what you're going to be doing is, and we've all done this, is essentially daydream. That's what I'm going to ask you to do in the exercise, is that if you've ever daydreamed in your life, you can do this exercise. All the specifics and the structured techniques to improve it and get better at all these other, modalities of intuition. You don't have to get that yet. Like for this exercise, if you can daydream, you'll be okay. So moving on, and everyone's done this. I just don't know why I put this slide in here. It's like, perhaps is my own daydream, is like being on a beach in Tahiti, having a cold drink in my hand, getting my tan on, something which with all this great weather is kind of hard to do right now. But, I'll feel the texture of the sand beneath me. I'll hear the sound of the wave crashing into the shore. I'll feel the relaxation come over my body, the contentment, and then just sink into that daydream and just relax into it. Like if you can do that, you can do this next exercise. From the visuals, the auditory, and the kinesthetic. But there is actually an important point about this because, and this is beyond an intuition webinar, like you can go look at the research on this, is that it's been proven without a shadow of doubt that imaginary experiences, daydreams that you create in your own life, depending on what you want to create in the world, if you can hold them precisely in your mind, it drastically affects your ability to actually create those in your life. This is what Olympic athletes do when they're trying to figure out how to navigate a certain, let's say, an Olympic skier goes down, is they'll visualize the whole course, the type of weight shift and the movements they'll need to do to go from one side to the next. This is what professional football players will do when they need to learn how to kick a field goal perfectly every time. And what essentially the research has shown is that if you're able to hold those very vivid, high detail imaginary experiences in your mind, it's just as effective as if you went out and did it physically in the real world, right? It's just as effective. And the reason why it's just as effective is because the unconscious mind cannot actually tell the difference between an experience that you had in reality, physical world, and an imaginary experience that you create in your mind. And because it can't tell the difference, that's not a negative thing, it's actually a positive thing, because what you can do is you can leverage that knowledge and then create the imaginary experience you want that then will help you achieve the goal you would like to see in your everyday life. So it's a very important point to know. So how can you do this? Where is priming your day useful? Well, going back to the topics, it can be useful in health. In health, where you are trying to meet an exercise regimen, or you're trying to commit to a diet, or just general body care, you can prime your day to be successful in those avenues. In wealth, say you have a telephone call, or a meeting, or a webinar, right? Or a sales situation, a presentation for clients, you can use it for this as well. And then even in relationships, you can use it in that avenue as well, where say you come home from a high pressure day, but you do want to be the partner or the parent, the best that you can be, prime yourself for that activity beforehand to actually create success in that area of your life. So it's a very powerful tool. I've used it a lot in my life, and I know the benefits it can have. You can use it in a lot of different areas. So the example I'm going to use to go through the steps, I'm just going to use an example of, let's say I have a lunch date with a prospective business client. But you can change the example scenario to anything, any type of activity you use in your life. So let's get into the steps. Step one of essentially priming your day, the first thing you want to do is focus on your heart. Is focus on the center of your chest. And there's a whole reason why I could get into why this is significant, why it plays an important aspect of working with body signals and intuition, but I don't have time for that. Just trust me that shifting your attention to your heart first before you do this exercise is a key role to actually being successful with it. And what you do is when you have your attention on your heart, you basically sub-vocalize and set an intention to align with your higher self, with your unconscious self, that the activity you're going to essentially create in this imaginary experience, to actually make it, you're asking it to come about in a way that's for your highest good and the highest good of everyone else that's involved. It's like the starting place. That's the bedrock, the foundation that you start. And it's something that will supercharge all of your intentions that come afterwards. So it's a very important part. But, some of you may be familiar with heart-based meditations and other intuitive techniques you can use that stem from the heart. But it's a very, very powerful place to begin with whenever you try and start creating effective, positive change in your life. The second step to prime your day is to shift your attention to the end of the outcome or activity that you want to actually have it come about in your life. Now, in my example of the meeting, say the business meeting, what I would do is in my imaginary experience, I would imagine the get-together, and I would also imagine the end of it being extremely pleased with the outcome. So I would feel the emotions of it. I would be filled with, like, I'd be getting up from the table from the meeting. I'd be feeling joy, harmony, enthusiasm, feeling like I did the best job that I could do in the presentation, and that I was really satisfied with the outcome. And I create this whole imaginary experience, fully see it on the physical and the emotional level. And then to kind of further anchor it and imprint it, what I like to do is just like, there's different ways to do it, but an easy one is you imagine it like surrounding it with a ball of white light and then moving that imaginary experience back into the center of your heart. And then you subvocalize and say into the heart, you say right into the center of your being. You basically say, this is the way I would like this activity, specifically name the activity. This is the way I would like this activity to come about for the highest good of myself and all concerned. And it's very important that you be specific. Don't leave it open and vague. So this activity, this is how I want it to come about with these physical things and these emotional things. It's very important. And then the final step is, now that we started with the end of the activity you want to come about, you then move to the beginning. So kind of it's backwards, but there's an important reason I don't have time to get into why, but just trust me on it. You move your attention to a new visualization now, imaginary experience of beginning the activity. So this is maybe in my example, I'm walking up to the restaurant and I'm being seated at a table and I'm feeling centered here. I'm incorporating the emotional level of experience. Centered, relaxed, enthusiastic. I'm feeling fully prepared for the presentation I'm about to do. And then maybe I fast forward it a little bit and I see my client show up and, I shake their hand and they're enthusiastic about being there and we exchange smiles and it's just a really good atmosphere. And I create that whole ball, that imaginary experience essentially. And then similarly to before, I put like a white light around it, move it into the center of my being, center of my heart, and basically subvocalize the same intention, the same words, where I ask my higher self, my unconscious mind, this is the way I would like this activity specifically to come about, and in ways that are for the highest good of myself and all concerned. And that's it. That's the end of the exercise. Essentially, you start with the heart. You then move to the end of the activity, bring that back to the heart, and then always put that statement in there for the highest good of myself and all concerned. Then go to the beginning of the activity, create that imaginary experience, bring that back to the heart, and that's it. And this can take you can do this you practice these steps, you can do this in 60 seconds. It's very quick. And so this is useful when you want to, maybe something that's about to happen in a couple hours, like a webinar, right? You can quickly do this to kind of prime yourself to be as effective as possible to create an outcome that you want at the end of the day or the activity. Now, the second real quick exercise here before I wrap this webinar up is just a picture of some train tracks, because there's something else that can happen if you say you do this, you've primed your activity, but then you notice maybe partway through in the middle somewhere that the train is starting to go a little bit off the tracks. Derailments ahead, right? You get that in sense. But what is that sense? Well, it's something in your body, typically. What do you do? Well, this second exercise is a really quick, what I like to call this is a real-time reorientation. You can do this in about 20 seconds at most. That'll bring you back into alignment with your original intention for the activity, whatever it is. In my example of the business meeting, let's say at the lunch meeting, maybe people were being distracted or they were unfocused. Lots of tension was in the room for some reason. Or maybe I was nervous, whatever it was. The solution is that in real time, we reorient ourselves to get back on track. And you do that with 2 steps. Step number 1. The first step is we focus on the body feeling, that signal that's telling us there's something wrong. And we're not trying to analytically name it. We're not trying to say, oh, well, something's wrong. Great, that's a mental thing, right? It's helpful to let us know there's a problem, but it's not helpful in resolving that problem. What we have to do is we have to imagine putting a picture frame around the part of our body that's letting us know from our intuition that there's something that is off here. That's something we should do something about it. And so you tune into that part of the body very, very clearly. This is the picture of the eyeglasses focusing, right? But, in this example, maybe this is in your heart. you have this sinking or heavy feeling in your heart that things aren't going the way that you wanted. Maybe it's like sinking a little bit, or it feels dense. Or another one that maybe it could be your legs maybe are jittery or antsy. You're bouncing your legs up and down and under the table. Like, what is that? There's something wrong. Maybe that's you being twitchy and wanting to run for the door because you're whatever it is, right? It's like focus first on the body feeling, frame it, objectify it as clearly as you can, and then what you're going to do is you're going to move on to the second step. The second step is, after you focus on that body feeling, imagine, now instead of an imaginary experience, it's the body feeling itself. Surround that with a ball of white light. It's just a really simple visual exercise to do. Surround it with a ball of white light, and then move that feeling to the center of your heart. And you can sub-vocalize right after that into the core of your being, to your higher self, your unconscious mind. You sub-vocalize, please make this right immediately in ways that are for the highest good of myself and all concerned. It's a very quick technique. You can get it done in 20 seconds at most. Tune into the body signal, move the body signal into the heart, and then basically state with confidence to the unconscious, to the higher self, please make this right immediately, and do it in ways that are for highest good of myself and all concerned. And really, you have to have trust. You have to have trust in your higher self, trust in your body, trust in your unconscious mind that it will respond. And it will. And you will, by doing this, by practicing this technique, you'll get the feedback yourself, because suddenly you'll realize that maybe the signal's gone. That nervousness, the bouncing of the legs stops. The feeling in your heart kind of fades away. And, really what you're doing here is you're developing a relationship with your higher self. This is a dialoguing technique, very simple one, that effectively allows you to operate more successfully in the activities or what you want to create in the world. So these are just two techniques that I really was excited about sharing in this webinar, of more coming up soon. But these are ways that basically you can access intuition in real time, kind of reverse engineering the levels of experience and then applying them successfully in your life. So kind of moving forward, what's next? What's next for applying intuition? What's next with this kind of new endeavor I'm doing on YouTube? If YouTube is still even going on, I don't know. I hope it is. I hope the stream's still going. I haven't really been able to look. But kind of what's on the horizon for me and this kind of avenue of instruction and training series and stuff that I'm going to be doing. Well, the rest of the webinar I know is not going to be for everybody, because some people are only interested in getting their feet wet, which is fine. Like, I was at that point in my life, which was okay. I was like peeking through the crack in the door. What is this intuition thing? How can I use it? Okay, well, here's some simple techniques. I'll test it out and I'll come back, right? It's like, okay, and that's fine. But the rest of this webinar is something that I'm really excited to share with people who know, and they signed up for this, they're here because they know that their intuition is telling them it's time to take that what they're doing in their life, with their unconscious mind, with their intuition, and take it to the next level. And that's what I'm really excited to share with you guys, because I've been spending, I spent 10 decades going to workshops, retreats, seminars, and applying this in my own life. And I've finally gotten to a place where I feel confident enough to be able to start sharing these with a larger audience. And so, you will know this. If you're in a place where you're here because your intuition is telling you, I need to start developing these techniques because I have a purpose or a destiny, whatever it is in your life, these are the type of tools that will help you get there. And so the rest of this webinar is an exciting announcement I have that I'm launching at the beginning of next month, which is a new workshop series I'm going to be hosting on essentially empowering individuals with very, very structured techniques of applying intuition to manifest things that you want to come about in your life. But it's a lot more than that too. So I want to get into the specifics real quickly here at the end. The first thing in this online workshop, it's going to be on March 2nd, 2019. So it's the beginning of next month. It's a full day online workshop. So it's a masterclass, if you will, for the day. And I have 4 key things that I believe are necessary to start employing these practically in your life to start creating change that you want to see with these avenues. So the first step is creating vivid, effective, imaginary experiences, kind of like what I talked about in the beginning and or in the middle of this on how we started to use this in these 2 exercises. To do this, though, in this part of the workshop, Essentially, I will be giving you guys a guided walkthrough on how to harness your dominant method of perception, whether that's visual, whether that's auditory, whether that's kinesthetic. And I'm going to show you guys not only how to harness your dominant one, but I'm also going to show you guys how to access your less dominant avenues or modalities of perception and bring those up. Because if you really want to be effective with imaginary experience, the type of stuff that Olympic athletes use to get that gold medal, whether it's or NFL play, whoever it is, it doesn't matter what you're interested in pursuing or creating in the world, is that if you can bring that level of imaginary experience up, it will have drastic and dramatic positive impact on what you're trying to achieve. So that's going to be the first part. That'll be in the morning, essentially, the first part of the workshop. The second part of the workshop is how to locate your inner power point. At least that's what I like to call it. This is your inner anchor. And it's more than just your heart center. That's kind of like a quick one we can use. The inner power point for individuals typically is a little bit different. Sometimes it's the heart, sometimes it's a different area. But the goal with this, and this is the second half of the morning, I'll be showing you guys how to create a biofeedback trigger to consciously activate your inner power point, which will be a priority. Basically, well, it's a mechanism for prioritizing what you actually want to create in your life. And this is the kind of thing that where you start building that muscle, you start practicing this technique, you can actually somewhat dilate your perception of time by doing this because you're able to slow down. It's like when I was in that car accident and time like almost stopped, my body knew I needed to focus because it was so important. There was nothing else that was more important to my survival, my physical being, my physical well-being at that point than being 150%, made a statistic, right? 100% focused on the task at hand. And in doing so, by bringing attention to that level of fidelity, time slowed down. And you can actually do that consciously. And there's a technique that essentially in this workshop, I'm going to show you on how to actually employ that regularly, which once you have others, let's say goals, well, goal is a bad word and I'll tell you why in a minute, but if you have intentions or targets or things you want to manifest in your life, if you can put those into the avenue that has 100% prioritization for survival, for what you want to see come about in your life, it will basically dramatically increase the chance it will come about. And so locating your inner power point is how you actually prioritize what you actually want to manifest with you in your life. Third step, this is the beginning of the afternoon. We're going to shift to how to now build upon what you learned in the morning to successfully outpicture your intent. And this is a very valuable one for me, and I've seen the actual practical applications of this because, I mean, here's just a really brief example and why this is significant. And we were all familiar with it, even just maybe you run into this a couple months ago, where you have the New Year's resolution. We set this goal, right? You know, I'd love X, Y, or Z to happen this new year. And you have this nice lofty goal. And, you know, it's typically New Year's resolutions. Almost all of them always fail. But why? Why do they fail? And, you know, the person, maybe I've experienced this even myself in New Year's resolutions, where I struggle because it's something that I just won't achieve. And there's an internal struggle, a battle essentially between my old habits and my new dream, which eventually culminates in that new dream needing to be let go. And with this technique, if you're able to figure out how to, with laser-like precision, prioritize and set up an out-picturing intention that you want to come about with very high level of specificity, with high level of imaginary experience, it's almost like you're a magnet for what you want to come about in your life. It's almost like it could not happen. That's how certain you are. That's how precise this technique is. And I would not be sharing this if I had not seen these practical applications in my own life. This is from my consulting business, with my remote viewing consulting or personal coaching that I've done on the side, where it's like I'll apply these techniques and suddenly out of nowhere, spontaneously, suddenly a whole bunch of new clients show up, or a whole bunch of money when I needed it showed up. And whatever it is. It has also showed up when I've applied it to health, where it's like having a crystal focus, all parts of my consciousness, from my higher self to my unconscious mind to my waking awareness, are all in alignment with a precise laser-like target that it just comes about effortlessly and easily. And so in the third part of the workshop, that's what I'll be talking about. And it's like, so forget about goals. Goals are things that actually they're too generic. You know, when I learned remote viewing, one of the things that they discovered when they did 20 years of research in remote viewing is that you need a target. You need a high level of specificity if you want to actually access information about it with your intuition perception. It's actually the same thing if you want to manifest things with your intuition as well. So this is where the third part of the course comes in. The final part is, to wrap up, this is probably perhaps the most significant part. Well, I don't know, significance perhaps is a personal thing, but is that the final part is learning how to dissolve subconscious blockers. Because the big part of just setting up a goal, well, yeah, it's not specific, is that there are likely things that exist. There's a reason you don't have it yet. There's a reason it's not in your life right now. And that reason is a blocker that's typically on the subconscious level that's preventing you from attaining it. And so what you need to do is you need to bring that up to the conscious level. And you need to be able to evaluate it. You need to be able to see it, just like we saw the body signal. And then by simply observing it and seeing it as clear as day, you're able to release it. And so this is a very effective technique that I've developed, I have a lot of techniques I've used on this, but on this workshop, I want to give you guys kind of like a very quick technique to not only learn how to dissolve subconscious, kind of like self-sabotaging type of habits, but also a way to turn them around to not only not exist anymore to inhibit you, but also to turn them around in a way that actually helps you achieve the target goal that you set out for yourself. And so the name of this class, kind of all these steps combined, what I'm calling this is Deep Intuition. This is a deep intuition workshop that it's an intensive full day in the morning and in the afternoon. Now from the very beginning to the very end, you can start accessing your intuition with advanced strategies to applying and manifesting powerful outcomes in your life. And these are ones not that I've just read in a book somewhere and I'm showing you. These are ones that I've developed, that I've used in my own life, and I know work. And so, I wouldn't be doing this webinar and doing this whole process if I didn't really believe in them. And so if you feel that too, if you feel that now is a time to begin learning how to access these inner techniques and applying them in your life to create the world you want to see, first in your local environment, and then perhaps being a positive effect for change in a larger environment, these are techniques that will be applicable for you. So hopefully that excites you. I mean, it excites me. I'm really actually, this is invigorating. I had a lot of like brimming energy at the beginning of the year to start, how can I start sharing this? How can I start putting this together through free workshops, through new videos on YouTube, and then also, free webinars, and then also workshops as well that really do a deep dive on these techniques to share these with other people. So if you are interested in this and you want to sign up, you can head over to my website at technicalintuition.com. The sign up is there. The sign up for the basic course for the weekend is $3.99 for the full day intensive workshop. However, since you guys are still here in the webinar, I am offering you guys a special early bird offer to sign up for this class. And it's only for people who are watching the webinar. Like the video on YouTube isn't going to stay there. It's only people who attended this live. I'm offering this. And there's also going to be a 48-hour window on this because seating is limited for the workshop. I don't want this to be like a massive crowd essentially that I can't have individual conversations with people in the class. So if you sign up within the next 48 hours, you attended the workshop, I'm going to take $100 off for you guys, and it's going to go down to $299 for the full day workshop. So, and to do that, you can go over to technicalintuition.com, and when you check out, simply use the promo code webinar in all caps, and you will get that $100 off. So remember though, it is first come, first serve. I haven't precisely figured out how many seats I want to have, but once it starts filling up, I definitely will close the door at some point. So if you are interested in this and you feel now is the time that you do want to learn these powerful techniques and begin applying them in your life, then sign up early because I really think that this will fill up pretty quickly. So with that, I hope you're excited about learning more potentially about your deep intuition like I am, as much as sharing it with you. Thank you for attending this workshop, and I hope you guys found value in it and being able to kind of apply some of these techniques in your life to prime your day and then also reorient yourself in real time, working with intuitive body signals and then as well as imaginary experiences to get yourself on track. But there's certainly a lot more I could go into, And, obviously also join me in the next 2 weeks of free webinars I'll be doing, also promoting this workshop that I'll be hosting at the beginning of next month. We'll be talking about other intuitive techniques that you can apply practically in your day-to-day life to improve your well-being, happiness, and also, let's just say, the environment of those around you, because that's really what is really important, at least to me, is changing the environment in a positive way. It's like rising that tide, if you will. So anyway, that concludes the webinar, and so I will check out a couple questions, I guess, here at the end before I wrap up. Thanks again for sticking around. I never know how long these things are going to go, but if you enjoyed it, sign up for the next one and let me know. Head over to my website. I'm always welcome and open to feedback and comments, or email me at directors@technicalintuition.com. I check all those emails and try my best to get back to you on those. But I'll check over Q&A here, and then I hope, is the live stream still going? It is still going. Wow, that's fantastic. Let's see, are there any, well, let me go to Zoom because that's the actual webinar. Are there any questions, you guys? Maybe I'll answer just a couple questions here before I wrap up that you have maybe about the class or even the webinar, the intuitive methods that we went over today. I'd be happy to answer a couple questions on that front. I do have one question under the Q&A part of Zoom, so I'm just going to look at this one. Will you be having this workshop on any other days or in videos on Patreon, YouTube later? Okay, so that was a question by Kevin. Thank you for the question, Kevin. So for the workshop itself, right now I don't have plans for that, but it's actually a very good thing for me to start considering. At the moment, I would like to have kind of a specific date set for that workshop, but it's not, I may actually run that workshop multiple times moving forward. So I'll have that workshop, that's the deep intuition workshop that is specific. Maybe I'll run that once a month or something like that. I haven't gotten that far yet, but it's a great idea. Probably will do that. Maybe run it once a month kind of a thing at different times, because I know people have different schedules. Some people work on the weekends, some people work on the weekdays, different time zones. I do want that workshop to be live though, because, and maybe later on I'll make it available as a video recording. I feel like these techniques are, it's different than my remote viewing classes in a way, because I feel like creating a space to really impart the ideas and working with those in the workshop is so critical. That's the way I learned it. I learned it at different retreats, whether that was like at the Esalen Institute or different meditation workshop, whatever it was like kind of getting that hands-on experience with the individual that's teaching the class or the workshop was so valuable to me, because there are, with certain misconceptions or misapplications, you can kind of you'll lose out. You won't be able to apply the tool. You'll have less than positive results. And so my goal with getting this information out there, my goal with creating this workshop, is for you to successfully apply these tools in your life to be the change you want to see in the world, right? Cliche as that saying is, right? And so I think to be like true to that passion that I have about sharing this information, I think that these kind of need to be live. Whether in the future that means these actually end up being live in-person workshops, that's a possibility down the road. But maybe in some circumstances, I'll release these through recorded videos in some manner. Not in the short term, I don't think yet, simply because of the reasons stated. But definitely thank you for the question. I do hope to run multiple versions of these workshops and other workshops like it on different topics in the near future. Jean-Claude asked, Brett, Sarah's asking how you differentiate between body pain signals and noticing the 11:11 on the clock subconscious signal. That's an interesting one. Well, the difference between body signals and then say like, I'm not, this is maybe my personal opinion. I think the clock thing is interesting. It's like I'm only half sold on all of that. Yes, I've had some pretty interesting spontaneous things occur by seeing the clock and then something happened or whatever it was I was talking about. Like, whoa, that was a super crazy spontaneous alignment. That's more of like a mental thing almost, though. It's like you're looking at a clock and you're analyzing the number with what's going on in real time. It's a little bit different. It's more on the mental plane. It's not, it can trickle down into the emotional and the physical, but that's not where it starts, I would say. The body signal is something that starts in the physical level of your experience and then percolates up into the emotional level. And so this is, you think of like I mean, the easiest one, this was in my video, is a headache. But you can do this with any kind of body signal, any kind of pain, whether it's your leg is sore or your part of your body isn't healing as fast for whatever reason. You're still always, maybe it was a year ago you had an accident in your arm or your leg and it just hasn't healed all the way. It's like, well, maybe you need to tune into that body signal. Maybe there's a message that's waiting for you that the unconscious or the higher self has been trying to get your attention with, and it doesn't have any other language to communicate with you, so it's using this. It's slowing down the metabolic process. It's slowing down the healing process. Why? So you'll pay attention. So you'll get the information. So I suppose that's how maybe I would differentiate between the two, is that in the body signal, it's like typically comes up as a pain body signal, whereas noticing 1111 is very much a mental thing. They can coincide synchronistically sometimes, but the meaning of that, I think a lot of, when you look at clocks and different times, there's a lot of projection that can go on there where you make it be something that it may be or it may not be. Maybe it's this different. Maybe you have a really deep inner knowing about it, and which, who's to say is not true. That's your experience. It's your subjective experience, and it's just as real as anything else. But it may not be objectively true in the way that you think. So you have to be careful on some of those things. This is why feedback is very, very valuable in this arena. Hopefully that answered your question. Last question here from Christine Ferguson on Zoom. I see, okay, so she asked, when you apply the white light around the situation or incident, how do you train yourself to focus so fast? That's a fantastic question. When I started this practice, I was not good at it. It took me time. And so it's like any other skill. It takes practice. You want to become a remote viewer, you practice. You want to get fantastic at painting, playing the piano, riding a bicycle. You have to practice. And so you take baby steps. If it takes you 10 minutes to do it, then you take the 10 minutes and you set a kind of a regular regimen for yourself to practice it maybe once a day or 5 minutes, however long it takes. And so, but this is the thing, this is one of the key points I mentioned earlier in the webinar, is that intuition techniques like this they get a lot of value out of repetitive experience of doing it again and again and again and again. So long as you're doing the correct structure again and again and again. I did swim class when I was younger, and my swim coach, this kind of, it's like it's burned into my mind, this saying that she would tell us, and it's like, practice makes permanent. He's talking about our swim stroke, and it's like, it's true. You don't want to permanently ingrain the wrong method. So, it's like, go back and, when I make the live recording available, if it helps, go back and double check, or if you have notes, double check your notes, that you're practicing the correct structure. But the more you do it, the better you'll get at it, the better you'll get at the visualization of the white light. So, the white light one, that's just one of the techniques that I personally use because I'm a very visual person. I'm able to, this is something that I found that I naturally was drawn to. This is my natural modality, is visual. I have two screens. I see through my eyes, and then I also, almost like an overlay over here or wherever I want it, I'll have like this imaginary screen that I can have a movie playing on, like pictures, people moving, things happening. And then what's really kind of cool, and this is kind of a different application entirely, is I can take that screen and completely overlay my eyes into where I'll see other things. And I've talked about these in different interviews in the past, of when I was at workshops or at events. And this is what I would refer to as like real-time visual clairvoyance. Visual clairvoyance may be a little redundant, but it's like I'm very, very visual person, and I can create those visualizations at a snap. But that came with practice, and that came with doing a lot of visualization meditation, ultimately then was applied into an imaginary experience that was more than the visual. It was also the emotion. It was also the other senses that aren't visual. So practice them. I hope to sign up. Christine, make sure you attend the third free webinar I'm hosting at the end of the month on applying meditative and mindfulness, heart-based mindfulness techniques, because I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that in detail that you may find useful. So check those out, because that was one of the ways that I got a lot of value and ability to start developing quick visualizations. But also, obviously, I encourage you, sign up for the workshop on the 2nd of the beginning of next month, because I will be going in depth on not only how to develop visualization imaginary in your imaginary experiences, but also the other ones as well. Maybe you're more auditory, maybe you're more kinesthetic, the feeling side of things. In that workshop, you'll discover how to act, which one you are, but not only discover which one that you have is dominant already, but also how to bring up and level up those other ones as well. So that's a big part. That's what we jump into we'll jump into at the very beginning in the morning. So check out the workshop. I encourage you to do that if you're interested in actually applying those in your life. So anyway, great. Any other last minute questions? Let me check over on the YouTube. So those are 3 questions from the Zoom. Thank you, really appreciate everyone joining me on this this webinar. Hopefully it's been fun for you. It's been fun for me. I had a lot more signups to this than I originally realized. It was kind of last minute, right after the video. So, thanks for showing up. Hopefully it was valuable for you. Yeah, no, I guess I'll have to figure out this YouTube thing out more on the next live stream. But thank you everyone on YouTube. Thank you everyone on Zoom. If you have any questions about the workshop, you can always email me. Again, directors@technicalintuition. And if you're interested, you do want to essentially level up your intuition, access deep intuition, go over to Technical Intuition, sign up for that class, because those seats will not necessarily be available all the way up to that date. And only for the next 48 hours will you have that ability to get that $100 discount off the actual workshop cost. So anyway, I hope to see you in my next free webinar and also in my workshop, which I'm very enthusiastic about. So anyway, thank you for joining me, and I will see you guys in my next videos on my YouTube channel and next week on my webinar. Take care, everybody. Bye.